Who could produce shoes? Leather workers have been traditionally held in contempt since they work with dead animals, which are seen as dirty and polluting. During the First World War, however, there was a huge demand for shoes for the armies. Caste prejudice against leather work meant that only the traditional leather worker and shoemakers were ready to supply army shoes, so they could ask for high prices and gain impressive profits. Madigas making shoes, 19th century Andhra Pradesh. Madigas were an important untouchable caste of present day Andhra Pradesh. They were experts at cleaning hides, tanning them for use, and sewing sandals. Demands for equality and justice. Gradually, by the second half of the 19th century, people from within the non Brahman caste began organizing movements against caste discrimination and demanded social equality and justice. The Satnami movement in central India was founded by Ghasidas, who worked among the leather workers and organized a movement to improve their social status. In eastern Bengal, Haridas Thakur's Metua sect worked among Chandala cultivators. Haridas questioned Brahmanical texts that supported the caste system. In what is present day Kerala, a guru from Iswaha caste, Sri Narayan Guru, proclaimed the idea of unity for his people. He argued against the treating people unequally on the basis of caste differences. According to him, all humankind belong to the same caste. One of his famous statements was Oru Jati, Oru Matam, Oru Devam, Manushyanu, one caste, one religion, one God for humankind. All these sects were founded by leaders who came from non Brahman castes and worked amongst them. They tried to change those habits and practices which provoked the contempt of dominant castes. They tried to create a sense of self esteem among the subordinate castes. Gulam Giri, one of the most vocal amongst the low caste leaders, was Jyotirao Phule. Born in 1827, he studied in a school set up by the Christian missionaries. On growing up, he developed his own ideas about the injustices of caste society. He set out to attack the Brahmins, claimed that they were superior to others, since they were Aryans. Phule argued that the Aryans were foreigners who came from outside the subcontinent and defeated and subjugated the true children of the country. Those who had lived here from before the coming of the Aryans, as the Aryans established their dominance, they began looking at the defeated population as inferior as low caste people. According to Phule, the upper caste had no right to their land and power in reality. The land belonged to indigenous people, the so called low castes. Phule claimed that before Aryan rule, there existed a golden age when warrior peasants tilled the land and ruled the Maratha countryside in just and fair ways. He proposed that Shudras, laboring caste, and Ati Shudras, untouchable, should unite to challenge caste discrimination. The Satya Sodhak Samaj, an association Phule founded, propagated caste equality. In 1873, Phule wrote a book named Gulam Giri, meaning slavery. Some 10 years before this, the American Civil War had been fought, leading to the end of slavery in America. Phule dedicated his book to all those Americans who had fought to free slaves, thus establishing a link between the condition of the lower castes in India and the black slaves in America. As this example shows, Phule extended this criticism of the caste system to argue against all forms of inequality. He was concerned about the plight of upper caste women, the miseries of the laborer, and the humiliation of the low castes. This movement for caste reforms was continued in the 20th century by the other great Dalit leaders like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in Western India and E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar in the South. No place inside the classroom. In the Bombay Presidency, as late as 1829, untouchables were not allowed into even government schools. When some of them pressed hard for that right, they were allowed to sit on the veranda outside the classroom and listen to the lessons without polluting the room where upper caste boys were taught. Activity. Imagine that you are one of the students sitting in the school veranda and listening to the lessons. What kind of questions would be rising in your mind? Second, some people thought this situation was better than the total lack of education for untouchable people. Would you agree with this view? Source 3. Me here and you over there. Phule was also critical of the anti-colonial nationalism that was preached by upper caste leaders. He wrote, "The Brahmanas have hidden away the sword of their religion, which has cut the throat of the people's prosperity, and now go about posing as great patriots of their country. They give this advice to our Sudras, Muslim, and Parsi youth that unless we put away all quarreling amongst ourselves about the divisions between high and low in our country and come together, our country will never make any progress. It will be unity to solve their purposes, and then it will be me here and you over there again." Jyotirao Phule. Who could enter temples? Ambedkar was born into a Meher family. As a child, he experienced what caste prejudice meant in everyday life. In school, he was forced to sit outside the classroom on the ground and was not allowed to drink water from taps that upper caste children used. After finishing school, he got a fellowship to go to the US for higher studies. On his return to India in 1919, he wrote extensively about upper caste power in contemporary society. In 1927, Ambedkar started a temple entry movement in which his Meher caste followers participated. Brahman priests were outraged when the Dalits used water from the temple tank. Ambedkar led three such movements for temple entry between 1927 and 1935. His aim was to make everyone see the power of caste prejudices within society. We are also human beings. In 1927, Ambedkar said, "We now want to go to the tank only to prove that, like others, we are also human beings. Hindu society should be recognized on two main principles: equality and absence of casteism." The non-Brahman movement. In the early 20th century, the non-Brahman movement started. The initiative came from those non-Brahman castes that had acquired access to education, wealth, and influence. They argued that Brahmins were heirs of Aryan invaders from the north who had conquered southern lands from the original inhabitants of the region, the indigenous Dravidian races. They also challenged Brahminical claims to power. E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, or Periyar as he was called, came from a middle class family. Interestingly, he had been an ascetic in his early life and had studied Sanskrit scriptures carefully. Later, he became a member of the Congress, only to leave it in disgust when he found that at a feast organized by nationalists, sitting arrangements followed caste distinctions, that is, the lower caste were made to sit at a distance from the upper castes. Convinced that untouchables had to fight for their dignity, Perrier founded the self-respect movement. He argued that untouchables were the true upholders of an original Tamil and Dravidian culture which had been subjugated by Brahmins. He felt that all religious authorities saw social divisions and inequality as God given. Untouchables had to free themselves, therefore, from all religions in order to achieve social equality. Perrier was an outspoken critic of Hindu scriptures, especially the codes of Manu, the ancient lawgiver, and the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana. He said that these texts had been used to establish the authority of Brahmins over lower castes and the domination of men over women. These assertions did not go unchallenged. The forceful speeches, writings, and movements of lower caste leaders did lead to rethinking and some self criticism among upper caste nationalist leaders. But Orthodox Hindu society also reacted by founding Sanatan Dharm Sabhas and Bharat Dharm Mahamandal in North and associations like the Brahman Sabha in Bengal. The object of these associations was to uphold caste distinctions as a cornerstone of Hinduism and show how this was sanctified by scriptures. Debates and struggles over caste continued beyond the colonial period and are still going on in our own times. Prayer on women. Perrier wrote, only with the arrival of words such as Thara, Mukhurtham, our women had become puppets in the hands of their husbands. We ended up with such fathers who advised their daughters that they had been gifted away to their husbands and they belonged to their husband's place. This is the result of our association with Sanskrit. Activity. Why does caste remain such a controversial issue today? What do you think was the most important movement against caste in colonial times? Organizing for reform. The Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmo Samaj, formed in 1830, prohibited all forms of adultery and sacrifice, believed in the Upanishads, and forbade its members from criticizing other religious practices. It critically drew upon the ideals of religions, especially of Hinduism and Christianity, looking at their negative and positive dimensions. Derozio and Young Bengal. Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, a teacher at Hindu College, Calcutta in the 1820s, promoted radical ideas and encouraged his pupils to question all authority, referred to as the Young Bengal movement. His students attacked tradition and custom, demanded education for women, and campaigned for the freedom of thought and expression. The Ramakrishna Mission and Swami Vivekananda. Named after Ramakrishna Paramhansa, Swami Vivekananda's guru, the Ramakrishna Mission stressed the ideal of salvation through social service and selfless action. Swami Vivekananda, 1863 to 1902, whose original name was Narendra Nath Dutt, combined the simple teachings of Sri Ramakrishna with his well founded modern outlook and spread them all over the world. After hearing him in the World Parliament of Religions at Chicago in 1893, the New York Herald reported, we feel how foolish it is to send missionaries to this learned nation. Indeed, Swami Vivekananda was the first Indian in modern times who re-established the spiritual preeminence of the Vedanta philosophy on a global scale. But his mission was not simply to talk of religion. He was extremely pained at the poverty and the misery of his countrymen. His family believed that any reform could become successful only by uplifting the condition of the masses. Therefore, his clarion call to the people of India was to rise above the narrow confines of their religion of the kitchen, and come together in the service of the nation. By sending out this call, he made a signal contribution to the nascent nationalism of India. His sense of nationalism was, however, not narrow in its conception. He was convinced that many of the problems facing the mankind could only be overcome if the nations of the world come together on an equal footing. Therefore, his exhortation to the youth was to unite on the basis of a common spiritual heritage. In this exhortation, he became truly the symbol of a new spirit and a source of a strength for the future. The Prarthana Samaj, established in 1867 at Bombay, the Prarthana Samaj sought to remove caste restrictions, abolish child marriage, encourage the education of women, and end the ban of widow remarriage. Its religious meetings drew upon Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian texts. The Ved Samaj, established in Madras, Chennai in 1864, the Ved Samaj was inspired by the Brahmo Samaj. It worked to abolish caste distinctions and promote widow remarriage and women's education. Its members believed in one God. They condemned the superstitions and rituals of Orthodox Hinduism. The Aligarh movement, the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College, founded by Syed Ahmad Khan in 1875 at Aligarh, later became the Aligarh Muslim University. The institution offered modern education, including Western science to Muslims. The Aligarh movement, as it was known, had an enormous impact in the area of educational reform. The Singh Sabha movement, reform organizations of the Sikhs. The first Singh Sabha were formed at Amritsar in 1873 and at Lahore in 1879. The Sabhas sought to rid Sikhism of superstitions, caste distinctions, and practices seen by them as non Sikh. They promoted education among the Sikhs, often combining modern instruction with Sikh teaching. Black slaves and white planters. You have read about how Jyotirao Phule established a connection in his book Gulamgiri between caste oppression and the practice of slavery in America. What was this system of slavery? From the time that European explorers and traders landed in Africa in the 17th century, a trade in slaves began. Black people were captured and brought from Africa to America, sold to white planters, and made to work on cotton and other plantations, most of them in the southern United States. In the plantations, they had to work long hours, typically from dawn to dusk, punished for inefficient work, and whipped and tortured. Many people, white and black, opposed slavery through organized protest. In doing so, they invoked the spirit of the American Revolution of 1776, exhorting, "See your declaration, Americans. Do you understand your own language?" In his moving Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln held that those who had fought slavery had done so for the cause of democracy. He urged the people to strive for racial equality so that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.